Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by the Sheridan Report and the Retired Boxers Foundation. Make sure you check both of those out on the internet. You can find the Sheridan Report at Sheridan Report on Twitter, and you can find the Retired Boxers Foundation with Alex Ramos on Facebook. I'm your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in a man who writes maybe the greatest article there is right now on boxing, and that's Casual Monday. How you doing, Jeremiah Preisser?
Oh, I'm excited, man. Yeah, everybody should tune in and take a look at those articles. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from them, and you never know if you're a dummy. Maybe you've had the spotlight shown on you.
Yeah, and I think that I've got to tag you too. And Michael Montero, it was in his tag part where William Pounds, who was the guy that tried to explain to us why Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't as great as Floyd Mayweather Jr., today did what all casual boxing fans that don't know their ass from a hole of ground do, and that was claimed that Deontay Wilder hit harder than Ernie Shavers. What do you think about that one, Jeremiah?
Well, I think I've had to start Casual Monday a little early this week because it's not only stuff like that, because I've seen that, okay? And you go to certain groups, and I don't know what it is about Deontay Wilder, but he seems to have garnered a loyal family or following among a select demographic, and it's weird how almost religious it's become. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the $50 million that he offered Joshua. Oh, Fury's ducking a rematch. It's like I've honestly seen from certain people that they honestly believe that Fury or Wilder is the most avoided man in boxing right now and the hardest punching heavyweight in history. But it's not only that. Not only is that provided me some ammo for Monday, but when I post about Sugar Ray Robinson and about how I think his jab and his footwork get underrated and they're oftentimes ignored, and I posted in a few groups, and all of a sudden a few of them migrate to my homepage and they start talking about how he's overrated and his footwork is shit and all this other stuff. And hey, man, I'm all for it. I'm not going to get in there and argue with you. Obviously, some of my buddies are, but you just provide me content. Make you slightly famous.
Yeah, and they're basically just half retarded. You ought to call it half retarded Monday. But the thing that was funny is with this William guy, who he's going to do a great podcast someday, I think, somewhere. Probably about alien abductions or something, but he then comes back with, well, Ernie Shavers got knocked out by guys, and the whole point of the article or the argument was that I thought Ernie Shavers hit a lot harder, and he's talking about who he lost to, and you got Buddy Gibbs and never coming in like the question was who hit harder, and I'm sorry, but Jerry Quarry, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes would have all kicked Deontay Wilder's ass. Even in 1977, Muhammad Ali would have kicked his ass. And, William, no, he thinks that Deontay Wilder could have beaten Larry Holmes and Muhammad Ali. And he probably thinks that Deontay Wilder, if he could get a clean shot at him, would knock out Jesus. So...
Well, Wilder is Black Jesus for some of these folks. I mean, dude, it's. I honestly think. I mean, I don't hate Wilder, but it just sucks with the state of boxing because it makes it easy to dislike certain fighters because they get polarized. You get these people who are in their camp. I mean, you go on YouTube. Look at. I don't even want to give them much recognition. Guys like what is it, 7-8 Sports or 787 Sports, and Dante's Boxing Nation. Guys like that. They're all they do is just ride this dude's. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, they're just constantly praising him. Praying at the altar of the Bronze Bomber, and it's odd, man. I don't get it, and I honestly think that Wilder is like one bad win away from just kind of being relegated to second-rate heavyweight. I mean,
you mean
the guy
loss,
is
right. He's had bad wins.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think he's one bad loss away from, just because he's still got that O in the loss column that I think people are giving him a bit too much credit. And I've even seen this on some of the more astute forums in boxing where they're like, oh well, he's got size and he hits hard. Okay, the dude again, he's not even as talented as plenty of the guys who came before him. Michael, oh goddamn, who's the guy who fought Lennox Lewis?
Michael Grant.
Yeah, he's not even as talented as Michael Grant. I don't even think his arms are as long. I actually think Grant had longer reach, tighter technique, was faster, and had a better jab. I mean, this is just a piss poor division. And again, if he loses badly, like if Joshua went out there and smacked him up, again, you're going to see the opinion of him drop, I think, dramatically.
Well, not with those guys, because then they would tell you how he broke his arm, his shoulder, and his leg, and that's why he lost. Because when I brought up Berman Stavern going to distance, I got from William, well, he had a broken hand.
Well, of course. I mean, isn't it convenient? And I'm going to touch on this topic later on, too, because of the On This Day. But it's just convenient when guys are in their biggest fights or they can't seem to finish the job or whatever, there's always some excuse. I mean, Deontay Wilder's talking about an injury he had, like he hurt his arm in sparring before the Fury fight, and we've got Instagram photos of him and shit. Come on, man. Don't just cut the crap, okay? If a guy went the distance, there's no shame in that. But to claim that, he's hitting harder than Ernie Shavers, if Muhammad Ali says you hit him the hardest or Larry Holmes, we're talking about two guys with legendary beards and legendary talent. I'm going to take that over a guy like Tyson Fury who got knocked down in the 12th round, okay? I'm not buying that.
Yeah, because Tyson Fury sucks too. So my question is this. What I would like to see is, did you see the weigh-in today for Luis Ortiz and Christian Hammer?
No, I didn't see it. Was it pretty or what?
No, it's just that Luis Ortiz, every fight seems to be getting in better shape. And I just hope that Fury still refuses to fight Wilder, and Wilder has to fight Ortiz again. Because I think Ortiz, who was not in shape, and that's not an excuse, you could just, he had tits. The first time they fought, an in-shape Luis Ortiz, without the benefit of a referee giving Wilder an extra 20 seconds when he's hurt after the round's over, before the next round begins, I think Luis Ortiz could beat him. I think it's possible Luis Ortiz could beat both of these guys.
Yeah, no, Luis Ortiz is a talented guy. I mean, stylistically, he's a tough outing for many of these guys, most of these guys, all of these guys. I mean, he's a technical southpaw. I mean, he's got a great left hand. He knows how to set it up. He's crafty. I mean, he comes from that Cuban school of boxing. These guys are refined in their ability. But we'll see. I mean, Ortiz seems to be on the outside looking in because of his style. And I'm not going to go as far as some of these guys who are like, oh, well, Josh was avoiding him or any of these guys are necessarily avoiding him. I don't know. A lot of this is politics and a lot of it's not as cut and dry as we like to think. And I know Eddie Hearn, I think, signs him. So I'm sure he's maneuvering him into something. But, I wouldn't mind seeing the rematch. I mean, especially if, Josh was going to keep doing whatever he's doing. But, yeah, I mean, Ortiz could be maybe it's not so much he's in better shape, but maybe they're just not doing drug testing anymore, and he's just, juicing like a Minute Maid bottle. I suppose that could be it too. But, he's a talented guy, and he's a tough styles matchup for anybody. But Wilder is just – he's not – I don't get it, man. It's like I'm not even that old. I'm not, Mike and when we talk to John Responsi and Einrenhofer, you guys have seen legends in the flesh like Larry Holmes and whatnot. I don't see how you even watch the 90s era heavyweights and then you're looking at Wilder and you're like, wow, this guy's a legend. He's an all-time great. All the dude has is Luis Ortiz and Bermain Stavern on his resume. That's it.
Yeah, and we have a Twitter message from a guy by the name of Jermaine from Brooklyn, New York, who states that why doesn't Jeremiah just come out and say that black people like him, Jermaine is a racist? So let me explain something. And this is a message I just got. I would like to explain something. When he says, when Jermaine says, or Jeremiah says, a segment of the population, he means a segment of the population that likes basically illiterate people who act like thugs and basically just shoot their mouths off with nothing to back it up. And I can tell you, I've seen plenty of white folk also that love people that act like a thug, that act like an asshole. And that is what cheers for Deontay Wilder. It's fanboys who are usually under the age of 30 and know nothing. So to say that that was a racist comment, we'll just tell you that you're probably a racist because you read everything as a racist comment. But if it acts like a thug, a certain population, and those same ones, love Mike Tyson, even though every time Mike Tyson stepped up, he got knocked down, or he bit somebody so he didn't get knocked down. So I think that's what you were trying to say, was it, Jermaine? Or Jeremiah?
Jermaine. Yeah, well, yeah, of course. I mean, obviously you couldn't. Obviously it's mostly black people who are, attaching themselves to Deontay Wilder. I mean, boxing promotes this inherent tribalism, so it's no wonder there. But of course, it's not only black people who do so. It would be naive to say that it's only them. I don't even know why you would assume that there's that sort of grouping, but naturally it is mostly black people who flock to Deontay Wilder. And of course, it's that way with the way with Jarrell Big Baby Miller too. Listen, when I saw
because he acts like an asshole, that draws assholes to him.
Well, and remember when we were talking about Anthony Joshua's appeal to America, and again, American sports is not like British sports where it's become much flashier over the years. The big dunks on ESPN highlights, the home runs, right? They've promoted a more flashy characteristic, and I think in an effort to sell these sports and attach people to them, and that's why you get a lot of when we talked about Anthony Joshua's appeal to an American audience, he lacks that. He doesn't have that sort of in-your-face, I'm gonna go out and kick your ass kind of thing that even Jarrell Big Baby Miller is exhibiting right now. So of course some people like it, some people don't like it, some people do it based on in-group out-group biases, but obviously it's not all black people who are doing so, but it is mostly black people who are doing so. So read into it whatever you like. I honestly don't care.
Yeah, y'all can kiss our ass. All right, next up, Manny Pacquiao says he's negotiating with Floyd Mayweather for a second fight. Do you think that there's anything to this, Jeremiah?
Hell, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, at this point, it makes sense for both of these guys. I mean, if anybody in their position is going to take that fight, anybody. I mean, if you can, work your butt off for 12 weeks and get paid tens of millions of dollars to do so, hundreds of millions of dollars to do so, you're going to take it. I mean, this seems to make sense. And of course, you never really know, right? I mean, Floyd seemed in the last interview that he did after Manny Pacquiao fought, he seemed content staying in retirement and just doing what he's been doing, and all of us would have accepted that and been fine. If he wanted to fight more exhibitions in Japan and got millions of dollars for that would have been fine too. I'm not one of those guys who's going to give him a hard time. Neither one of us have given him a hard time for that sort of stuff. I mean, it makes sense when you're on the plus side of 40 and you still want to generate revenue and that's all you've known for your entire life. So if this happens, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I don't think the pay-per-view numbers are going to do as well as they used to. I mean, these guys are even older than they were before. The way they treated the media members in the first fight has left a bad taste in some of their mouths, and it was promoted more as a celebrity thing than it was an actual boxing match. I mean, you look at how quickly they sold out, and all the celebrities they put up front and promoted them. They were constantly on about that. If you watch the first fight, if you happen to catch all this the run up to it, it was just all about the celebrities and who they had up front and this and that, and it was just. It wasn't all that appealing, but at this point, go ahead and do it. I mean, I'll watch it. I mean, I'm not paying for for it, but I'll watch it. At this point, it's still an interesting matchup. It's interesting enough. These guys still have enough left to make it, again, sort of intriguing. So I wouldn't mind it. I mean, you get paid huge money to do this. Go ahead. I mean, you're not going to get as many gullible people this time around. But again, I've got no problem at all with it.
Well, at least it would still be what I think would be considered 2 top 10 welterweights, especially in the, with Pacquiao. Mayweather hadn't fought for a while, but actually, I don't think this happens. I don't think Mayweather's stupid enough to do this. I mean, he hasn't fought a real fight in, 3 years? Why would you risk that 0 in a fight like this? Unless he's 100% sure. But even if you're 100% sure, I don't know, after being out of the ring that long, why you would want to do this. I know it's a lot of money, but he should have plenty of money. Should.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah, I mean, as much money as he's made in his career, I mean, he's the richest boxer to ever exist. You know what I mean? And I know he was rubbing elbows with Warren Buffett in Omaha and whatnot. So I had assumed from some of the things that he had indicated that he had made some investments, and I was under the impression that he was doing okay, but of course it's always hard to tell. I mean, a lot of these guys are not financially savvy, and he's even gotten some shtick from guys like T.I., the rapper, and 50 Cent and whatnot, from the way he's managed his finances. And again, I'm not, managing this guy's portfolio, so I can't say what exactly is going on behind the scenes. But, no matter how much money you've got, I mean, unless you're Bill Gates or, the aforementioned Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos, I mean, guys who are making, tens of billions of dollars, and it would be very, very difficult to lose that kind of money. If you're in the hundreds of millions of dollars, I mean, you look at what Mike Tyson, he made over $300 million in his career, and he ended up owing the IRS $8 million. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya is one of those people who made over, I think, $200 million, and he managed to be okay. But it's tough to say.
As we know.
Yes, I mean, it's tough to say, though. I mean, you look at certain things, and again, I don't know the dude's portfolio. I don't know where he has his money and investments. But if you look at some of the shows they've done before, the Conor McGregor fight, and long before that, he invests a lot in vehicles which have poor, they have poor resale value, right? They're not good long-term investments. He's bought a number of homes, which usually are investments, but these big eyeglass collections and clothes collections and stuff like that. I mean, it's good. He's earned the right to live lavishly if he likes, but it does appear, again, to somebody who, a layman, that maybe there have been a good number of bad investments, and maybe he's not making as much as, or maybe he doesn't have as much as you would think he would. But again, the money, we know how it works in boxing. Even if he's sitting on a pile of gold right now, it's tough to stay away. I mean, you look at legends like Sugar Ray Leonard, and it was tough to stay away, because there's nothing like boxing that will give you that sort of rush, so that's why some of them have resorted to doing cocaine and stuff like that to make up for it. So maybe he still does have, a passion for the sport, and he misses it a little bit.
Jeremiah,
I don't know.
I think if he fights again, he's probably got money issues. If he doesn't have money issues, I don't know why this would be worth it to him. He's already beat Pacquiao once. It was 4 or 5 years too late. Now we're looking at a decade too late. So I think that'll tell us where he stands monetarily, because if he's got a couple $100 million, why do you need to do this again? Because I'm sorry, this fight ain't making what the last fight did. Next up, WBC super featherweight champion Miguel Berchelt will be defending his former WBC be defending against former WBC 130-pound champion Francisco Vargas in a rematch on May the 11th on ESPN. What's your take on this one? This is a solid fight.
I'm not interested. Yeah, it's a solid fight, but I'm not that interested. I mean, Berchelt is past it. I mean, this is a guy.
Come on, Jeremiah.
I know. No, you're right. I mean, if you can expect anything with these two, at least it's action. But Burchelt is a guy that really hit the wall quickly. I mean, he's already past his best. I mean, after he had that tough one with Orlando Salido, who most people thought Salido won, the beating he got from Burchelt, Vargas is already on the downslide, and he has been so for years now. I mean, he was pretty promising when he first came up. He had an amateur background, which it showed in some of his boxing ability, but he just always lacked defensively, and it showed in his biggest fights. And again, now he's on the downslide, and so I expect Burchelt to put him away a little bit easier this time. And the thing with Burchelt, and again, so many of these other title holders that we go over all the time on just about every show, you got to step it up, man. It's like Burchelt and Tank Davis to me is the fight you've got to make. I mean, that's number one and number two right there. And so I'd love to see it get made. I don't know if there's any political issues there, but it's worth having. Burchelt's a good fighter, volume guy, pretty good punch. He can give you some lateral movement. Isn't a straight ahead, too stiff aggressor. And Davis is explosive and on the upswing, and that's what I'd really like to see. I mean, Vargas to me doesn't have too much of a shot. Again, I think he's just too far gone at this point. But just make the best of the best there, right? I mean, make that big fight at 130 and satisfy us all.
All right, next up, Canelo Alvarez. Looks like he said today that he basically just wants to unify the division. And he is eyeing a Jacobs fight, of course, May 4th, which is already made, and a September fight against Andrade. Doesn't look like he wants to deal with Triple G again until maybe Triple G gets his AARP card. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Golovkin's about to be collecting. He's about to be going to some of the buffets on Sundays. Getting a discount there. I mean, he looks like an old guy at this point. But I mean, hell, if Alvarez takes on Jacobs and then he takes on Andrade, which would make some sense actually, because Andrade's a DAZN guy too. Golovkin's going to be 30. I mean, let's just say that they match that for Cinco de Mayo weekend next year. I mean, Golovkin will be 39, 38, 39. Yeah. He might be 38 this year. I'm not even quite sure, but if I would, I don't know, man. It's tough with Golovkin because it's all been pretty quiet. I mean, I know they were saying that he was negotiating with DAZN, and it seemed like he was weighing his options. I mean, if he ended up going to ESPN, I'm not sure we're getting the Canelo fight because we're already talking about a guy who doesn't have much tread on the tires left, anyways. So, man, if Golovkin would have to wait another year, that would make real good sense. Financially, it's going to be a good sell. I mean, people are still going to want to watch it, but we've seen this time and time again because Golovkin is a damn tough guy, right? But if at 39 years old he ends up getting Canelo Alvarez for a third fight, that just, to me, that plays right into Alvarez's hands. Same with Golden Boy, where you just might get an older, even slower Golovkin who's even more faded, and maybe Canelo gets a stoppage there. I mean, I don't know. Golovkin, it's like a lot of these guys. It's like, well, what do you really want to leave with? I mean, if it's the money you need, you can't really blame the guy, but perception sways easily in boxing. So if you have a 39-year-old Golovkin and Canelo stops him, and you'll get people who are like, oh well, he always had the potential to stop him, or he just proved finally that he was the best of the two. So I just don't like how perception affects fights like that, even when two guys are way past their prime. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, what else do you do if you're Golovkin at this point? What other fight is going to sell? If you're heading towards retirement, you're trying to get some money for your 401k plan, or, you need a little extra money for those buffets, the senior discounts. Canelo is really what you've got there. I mean, I suppose he could, maybe go up to 168 and fight Callum Smith. That would be a pretty good sell. But outside those two, there's really not a whole lot for him, especially outside of DAZN.
All right. The boxing world lost a legend today as former WBA world featherweight champion Eusebio Pedroza passed away. I think he was in his early 60s. And Jeremiah, you wrote an article for thegrizzlytruth.net a couple years ago on Pedroza. What's your thoughts about Eusebio Pedroza?
Well, I mean, I was tasked with writing that article, and I didn't know much about him, to be honest with you. I mean, I'd heard his name, but like so many other sports, it's tough. It's tough to be an expert of all of these guys because, they've got tens of fights, and you only have so much free time, and there are all these different decades, and there's just so much nuance involved. And, watching the film, as I've always said, is the best way to gauge a guy. And, I've traversed the forums over the years and, seeing how other people judge him. And, then I watched the film myself and again, wrote the article and got a good feeling of who and what he was as a fighter. And, he gets a reputation as being a dirty fighter, and he certainly did do some dirty things. That's undoubted. You watch the Laporte fight, and that's probably the peak performance in terms of, dirt, but it also ignores it. Sometimes I think we have a tendency to simplify these things too much. Pedroza was far more than just dirty sometimes, I mean, his reflexes were fantastic. For a tall guy at featherweight, his center of gravity was very good. His footwork was very good. He had this kind of like how we were talking about Jose Napoli's last night. He had this innate radar that few others had. He would judge, these big wide swinging left hooks and sway out of the way. He could bob and weave. He could slip. He could duck under guys, even though he was usually taller than a lot of these folks. He could parry. He was just a really well-rounded guy. I mean, he wasn't a big hitter, but he had a respectable punch. He had good hand speed. He was just a well-rounded fighter. And, he couldn't defend against the level of competition that he did and not be. And, of course, like a lot of guys, he did get some questionable decisions. But to do it as long as he did, and especially after being knocked out by Zamora early in his career at 118 pounds, you got to give the dude a load of credit. I mean, and it's unfortunate that, Salvador Sanchez passed away early because a lot of people would have loved to have seen him against Sanchez, and I know, some people think that Pedraza would have beaten him. I wouldn't call that. That would have been a damn good fight. I wouldn't call that one, but we did lose a legend, and he went on to do some government work afterwards, and it doesn't seem like people really got in touch with him after his career was all said and done. But this comes on the heels of Rocky Lockridge's passing, his rival. So, we lost two legends in a short period of time, and it's unfortunate. But don't remember all the bad stuff, the dirty stuff. Take his ability in as a whole, and remember him that way.
Well, it is a fight, so dirty stuff happens sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing that struck
sometimes
me,
it has to.
Yeah, the thing that struck me is he fought a lot of fights in Panama, but he also went to other people's countries. I mean, I remember Royal Kobayashi, who he went to Japan and beat. Ruben Olivares, he goes to Houston, Texas, and knocks him out. A win that was impressive to me was over Pat Ford. He knocked out Pat Ford. That was the same Pat Ford that gave Salvador Sanchez a ton of trouble. I still think he lost to Lockridge the first time. I did give him the advantage the second time he fought him, no. Juan Laporte, who he won a decision over. And then, of course, probably the fight that is most remembered, at least by American and British fans, would be the fight with Barry McGuigan, which was I'm sure he made more money to go to Ireland and fight Barry McGuigan, but he went there and he fought him, and it was a good fight, and it was towards the end of his career. But that is why, Eusebio Pedroza is so good. That win by McGuigan, the fact that he beat Pedroza, is why McGuigan's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's like can't even think of his name though. The heavyweights, but it's the same thing with like Inga Mario Hansen. Even though I think this is a big stretch, but
he's
it's
not
really
in the Hall of Fame, is he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, no,
what?
It's pretty pathetic,
Jeez.
man. Yeah, I know. if anybody doesn't deserve it, it's
I never even considered that he could possibly be a Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah, no, it's awful, man. That's probably the worst selection that they've ever given. And I say that, I think Arturo Gatti is worth more than Ingemar Johansson. I mean, Johansson I think he stopped Eddie Macon and Floyd Patterson once, but really that's all his resume rests on. But no, you're right. I mean, it's like Pedroza was such a monumental figure at 126 that that victory alone is really what helped Barry McGuigan get in. And of course, it was other things too. A lot of people do give McGuigan a tough time, and
he did beat Juan Laporte, who was a damn good fighter.
Exactly. Yeah, he did beat Laporte, and I know he gets some credit for his political contributions. The Ireland was the Catholics and the Protestants and whatnot, right? And help bringing them together, and that's all good. Again, I'm not really arguing for McGuigan's inclusion right now. I want to focus on him beating Pedroza, and that it was still a good Pedroza, but you could see after that fight that was essentially the stopping point in Pedroza's career. He went on to lose a split decision over somebody like who was it, Edgar Castro afterwards, and then he had a few wins against no-hopers, and then he lost, and that was pretty much that afterwards. But he was an excellent fighter, and he was he got his deserved nod in the Hall of Fame. He was excellent, and it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate that he never fought Sanchez, but he paid his just due. You got to be careful with the amount of title defenses that you give him, though, because I don't think he was lenient for all those. And a lot of times that stuff does get a bit exaggerated, but the dude was an excellent fighter all around, and he earned it.
All right, what do you got on this day?
All right, so on this day, I think is an interesting one, and I didn't really have to sift through many of them to get to this one, but I found out that the rematch between Jeff Fenech and Azuma Nelson was on this day, obviously in Australia. It was a fight that Fenech was expected to win. Most people saw him beating Nelson in the first one. Anybody who's watched that fight, well, if you haven't seen the fight, it's worth watching.
By the way, that was one of those great Don King cards, because I remember watching the closed circuit version. And I think that the main event, wasn't it Tyson and Reddick?
Damn, is that what it was? You might be right.
Tyson Reddick was the main event. That was the co-feature. And I think, I'm not 100% sure on this, but the first fight was a young Riddick Bowe against Rodolfo Marin or some shit like that. It might have even been Burt Cooper. But Riddick Bowe knocked him out in 2 rounds, and then you had that great fight. And I think that Fenech won the first fight, but he definitely didn't win the second.
Nope, no doubt about that. Well, I actually think Kostya Tszyu made his professional debut on that card. I could be mistaken. If you're Australian and you're listening to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Tszyu made his pro debut on that or on that card. So that's another interesting factoid that is attached to this. But the first fight, in the rematch. Sorry. Tszyu made his debut in the rematch. But in the first fight, Fenech was the bully. He was able to back Nelson up consistently. He threw a lot of punches. His inside work was great, as it always is. And to me, he looked like he outworked Nelson, and Nelson didn't have a whole lot. He was just backed up too much and outworked too often. And then in the rematch, I've seen, as long as I've been visiting the forums, you know how a lot of these local heroes – a lot of the people, again, there's excuses, and maybe they're legitimate, maybe they're not, but again, one thing that I've noticed with boxing is it seems like whenever a guy has a poor performance in a big fight, there's always something that's attached to it. And sometimes I find it weird because I'm thinking to myself, well, if this is the biggest fight of your career, you should be able to get up for it. This should be the best training camp you've ever had, whatever. I've heard, that Nelson was recovering from malaria in the first fight, and that sapped him of his energy. And then on the Fenech side, he was overconfident and he lost his legs in that fight. Just from my observation as a guy who doesn't really, I didn't really have a horse in the race, what I observed was that Nelson made the proper adjustments to beat Fenech. So when you watch the first round, it seemed like Fennec kind of had a similar approach in the first one, where he was a little bit tentative, a little bit upright. They're just kind of filling him out, attacking him in spots whenever he got the opportunity. Well, in the first fight, it seemed like Nelson would give ground, and then Fennec could outwork him. In the second fight, to me, it looked like Nelson made the adjustment. He was like, I'm going to be the bully. He recognized that Fennec was a damn good pressure fighter and good inside. So to me, it looked like Nelson made a conscious effort not to stay on the ropes. Used his jab more. He was sharper with his combinations, and he was even really sharp on the inside. What I think is that once Nelson decided that he was not going to give up as much ground, and he was going to be more the bully, and then he landed that beautiful right hand to Fennec in the first round that knocked him down. Fennec didn't look that hurt, but from everything I've heard, Fennec was a pretty egotistical guy. So what I'm reading into that is that Nelson pretty much took some of that out of him. Fennec could no longer get sloppy on his way in because he risked the potential to get knocked down again. And he ended up getting knocked down 3 times in that fight. I think he got knocked down in the first, got knocked down in the second, and then the final one.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think the first 2 were right hands, and the last one was a really pretty left hook on the inside when they had an exchange. And that was viewed as Fennec's strong point. They were – Fennec was he bullied him on the ropes, and they were working on the inside. And in between Fennec's punches, Nelson landed a really good left hook that hurt him, and then just finished him off on the ropes. And like you said, there was no doubt who won the second fight. That was all Nelson.
How about this? Is it possible that in the first fight that Fennec never was the same again? Because the first fight was grueling, and even though he won it, it's kind of like Hagler-Mugabe. Mugabe was never the same. And the reason I say that is this. I think the fight after that, he fought a guy by the name of Francia or something. And Francia was like 32-12 or something. He wasn't a very good fighter. And he took Fennec the distance. And then Fennec took like 6 or 7 months off, fought Nelson, got dominated. The reason I say there was something wrong with him, and I don't buy the bullshit excuses, is after the Nelson fight, Calvin Grove, who was a really good fighter, but didn't really hit that hard, stopped Jeff Fennec. I mean, Fennec was never the same after his first fight with Nelson.
Yeah, and again, I don't, it's possible. I mean, there's so many things that get intertwined with these storylines anymore, especially with, with local heroes. And I think actually that we probably miss a ton more. You know what I mean? It's like if so-and-so loses, you never know what they could have been going on. What could have, because a lot of these guys, just like football, man, a lot of these guys fight injured, or, they've got some ailment that they're nursing, or, a sickness. And it's tough to say. There are a lot of complexities involved, but you very well could be right. I mean, I noticed that some of the Australian guys, they say that Fennec had deteriorated before the second Nelson fight, but they didn't say so much that it was because of the grueling aspect of the first fight, though, of course, you could be right. It might have been that.
That first fight was one of those fights in Vegas in June in like 110-degree heat, and it was a co-feature, so it was in the sun. That was a grueling fight, and there was a lot of punches landed on both sides.
Yeah, but wouldn't it take more out of Nelson than anybody? I mean, Nelson caught the brunt of that action.
I think this, though. You never know what ends it for somebody. I mean, how many times have we seen guys like a Mugabe or a Terry Norris or a Donald Curry who look in the prime of their career, they're still young, they look like badasses, they get knocked out once, and then they're never the same again. I mean, Donald Curry, after McCollum cracked him, never the same again. Terry Norris looked like the next coming of Sugar Ray Leonard when he fought Leonard in 90. After that, not so much. Mugabe, after the Hagler fight, he's getting knocked out in one round by Terry Norris. And John Mugabe, before the Hagler fight, was a stud. I think this is just like when we interview boxers or football players. There's some boxers that Ron Stander, Chuck Wepner, those are guys that are about 80 years old now. And they have all their faculties. Yaki Lopez, who was in multiple wars, I interviewed him. He's like 70 years old, no problems. And then you'll get other guys that don't seem like they took that many beatings, and they have issues. So I don't think you ever know. That's why, one running back may last till 38 years old, but the majority are done when they're 32. And then you got guys that have 1 or 2 great years, and they disappear when they're 26. I think the level of abuse or punishment that somebody can take, it can be completely different than somebody else.
No, I think you're right, and I think that's why when you discuss a guy's prime, it's such a sensitive issue anymore, and I think that's why a lot of fans get riled up about it, because a lot of us are like, oh, well, what, that was in prime, this was in prime. Again, these are sensitive issues because, and we also got to take into account Jeff Fenech had moved up. I think he'd moved up in weight. 2 traditional weight classes by that point? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just 1. I think he started at 118.
But it might have been 2.
Yeah, I think because I remember I thought he was going for his 4th divisional title in that one, so maybe that was at 130. Anyways, yeah, but these issues are so sensitive because it's hard to tease out the details sometimes because you never know what's going on, I mean, if a guy is apparently egotistical like Jeff Fenech was. And actually what I heard from some Australian guys was I guess Jeff Fenech used to spar with guys much bigger than him, like Jeff Harding and guys like that, and he used to just walk through some of these big guy shots and just keep bullying them away. Then I guess point. They brought in Costas.
It's the stuff you don't see sometimes. I mean, if he's banging with Jeff Harding, I'm doubting he's just walking through Jeff Harding because Jeff Harding was a tough son of a bitch at light heavyweight.
Right. Yeah. No, well, I'm not saying that he was whipping Jeff Harding's ass, but I heard that he was walking through his shots. And so I don't know, but I also heard that Costas was tuning him up. Yeah, no, it's not. Well, and I also heard that a guy like Costas was beating him up in sparring, and that kind of hurt his confidence as well. Because this guy was essentially just an amateur at the time. But it's tough, man. It's really hard to say what exactly goes on behind closed doors, and when a guy hits the wall. Like we were talking about Francisco Vargas, this guy has been in much fewer fights, and look at like Orlando Salido, who he fought. Yeah. Salido had far more fights than him and been in many more wars, but Salido was still high quality almost up until his last fight. Whereas Vargas, he had a few tough ones, and that was pretty much that. You look at a guy like Jake LaMotta, who probably had a Neanderthal skull and 90 plus, and then again, like you look at Meldrick Taylor. Right? I mean, you just never really know. And so it is hard to say, and it's hard to put on there. But just from what I can observe, just from what I can see, it looked like Fenech was still pretty damn good, and it looked like Nelson made the proper adjustments and did what he had to do.
Well, when you look at their careers, though, it's obvious, no matter what anybody says, even if you're Australian, that Azuma Nelson was a greater fighter. I mean, if you look at his career, I mean, he's won his 15th fight going life and death with Salvador Sanchez. After that, I think he even went to Puerto Rico and whipped Wilfredo Gomez. He'd stopped him. Pat Caldell, he knocks out Marcos Villasana. That was a great fight at the Forum because I remember watching that. I think it was on like a Saturday night in 1986. He got a majority decision.
First one was a draw, right?
Yeah. It was either a majority draw or a majority decision. I thought it was a majority decision for him, but I'm not sure. Unless I'm thinking of a second fight. But I think it was the first fight was a majority decision, and then he got a unanimous decision over him the second time. He beat Danilo Cabrera, who fought, I think, McGuigan for the world welterweight or featherweight title right around that time also. I remember he beat Lupe Suarez, Mario Martinez, Jim McDonnell, and then he runs into Pernell Whitaker. But at lightweight, he gave Pernell Whitaker probably his toughest fight.
Well, and I think it's worth noting too is like the Marcos Villasana fight. So you're right, that was a majority decision in Nelson's favor. But Villasana is an underrated guy. He's not a guy that a lot of people will talk about. But if you're familiar with the age of featherweights,
he was a tough son of a bitch.
Incredibly tough. I think he lost twice by TKO, and I think they were both cuts. I know one of them was, but I think maybe one of the other one was maybe too early to be documented. But he was damn tough. He another article I wrote about a contemporary featherweight was Antonio Esparagoza, and he fought Esparagoza to a draw, and Esparagoza was a damn good fighter too. So that's a quality win on Nelson's part. But
yeah,
no, you're absolutely
and
right.
The Whitaker
Nelson,
fight, though,
Nelson proved.
Have you ever seen him in Whitaker?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, that was a fight that, if I remember right, I think one of the judges had it a 1-point fight, another one had it a 2-point, and then, of course, you always got the butt guy who was like 116 to 111 or 117 to 110. But he fought Whitaker tooth and nails, and then and he fought that at lightweight. And I'm pretty sure after that he drops back down and wins the super featherweight title by beating Juan Laporte. And like we said, Laporte was a hell of a fighter. Then he gets the 2 fights with Fenech. He beats Calvin Grove, who had knocked Fenech out. And then he beats Gabe Ruelas. And then, of course, he had one of your favorite fighters, Jesse James Leija. He had 3 great fights with. That's towards the end of his career. Beats Gabe Ruelas again. And then he ends up losing to Gennaro Hernandez, who was a solid fighter. But if that was a, 5-year younger version of Azuma Nelson, I think Azuma Nelson knocks him out. And then, of course, you got to remember this. June 24th, we can talk about the 3rd fight between Nelson and Fenech, which happened in Melbourne in 2008.
Yeah, right. Sorry, give me a quick second. Yeah, but right, yeah, and so Nelson scored the only stoppage. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was long after the fact.
Yeah,
right,
that was for the
course.
AARP silver belt.
Well, yeah, they were handing out coupons, I think, for the buffets in that one too. So, but and the thing about Leija and Nelson as well is I think Nelson scored the only stoppage win of the series, even though I think he lost the series. But still, I mean, this is what I sometimes ponder, and I know people automatically side with the legend here. And Nelson was a legend himself too, but I still wonder, what would have happened if Salvador Sanchez would have gotten a more experienced Nelson, because Nelson was always better in the rematches. Whenever you gave him a tough fight, he was always better. And Nelson, again, like you said, he was a greenhorn when he fought Sanchez, and he fought him close. I mean, he did himself a good, he didn't do a disservice for his self there. So I would have loved to have seen a rematch between Nelson and Sanchez. And I think that would have been very interesting. Again, I know we all have a tendency to side with Sanchez just because of how well he did at the top. And, he didn't lose. I mean, but still, Nelson was really, really damn good.
Yeah, I would like to know why Pernell Whitaker never gave him a rematch.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it just after he won it, he didn't have an. I don't know. It's tough to
Whitaker,
say.
I don't think moved up until he fought Rafael Pineda, and that was in like 92 or 93. So there was a couple years in between there. And I don't remember Whitaker fighting anybody that good in those couple years. I think he fought like Polio Diaz and Jorge Paez, and he fought, of course, Harold Brazier, who I know all about because he was from Indiana. But outside of that, I just always wondered why the only close fight he had at lightweight, and I do think Whitaker won the fight. I think he won it by like 3 points. I think the 1-point thing was too close. But I always wondered why he didn't get a shot. But I know that Nelson did drop back down to super featherweight, so maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he just didn't want to do it again.
Yeah, man. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe I'm like you. I thought it's been a while since I saw that, but I did watch Whitaker's career from front to back not that long ago, and I think I had it about like you did. I think it was about a 3-point swing. I thought it was clear enough. I don't know. Maybe it just didn't seem like maybe he just didn't feel the need to do it again. And, I don't hold it against him. It would have been nice to see, it would have proved a better competition than the other ones. But I think Nelson was a little bit older at that point. But Nelson was fantastic. I mean, arguably the greatest African fighter to ever do it, besides Dick Tiger.
Who do you think was greater, Dick Tiger? Or
man, I don't know, man. I'm not a Dick Tiger expert, so I'd probably have to go. I'd have to go watch all the film on him, and then all of the film on Nelson, and then really judge it. But it's tough. It's tough. I don't know. I can't call that one right now.
I, I, I think I could call it. I think Azuma Nelson was better. I do.
Well, yeah, I don't think many people would argue with you. Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I don't know. It's close though. Dick Tiger was a hell of a fighter. Um, but I would lean towards Nelson. I think Nelson is a really, really underrated fighter. And when you look at the people he beat, and you look at the fight that he gave Sanchez, and if you look at what Sanchez did to Gomez, I think if you, in 1983 or 84, if you have a rematch, if the tragic death of Salvador Sanchez doesn't happen, I think Nelson would have got him in a rematch. I mean, Nelson technically was a superior fighter, and if he would have been an American or a Brit, everybody would talk about how great he was. The bad thing is, it seems like guys like him, Juan Laporte, Rocky Lockridge, Eusebio Pedroza, just kind of fall by the wayside. And I think a lot of that is just because, I mean, how many guys under lightweight really get remembered like that?
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate, man, especially that era. I mean, it was such a good era. God, and this is why I despise all these damn weight classes, all these damn belts. I'm telling you, man, guys like Antonio Esparagoza were very, very good,
well, how about
too.
these names? Have you seen guys like, Alberto Davila, Lupe Pintor? Yeah, there was a ton of these guys that could flat out fight. Jorge Lujan, Carlos Zarate, of course, Alfonso Zamora. I mean, there was a ton of guys back in the day, and I just don't see the depth at any division anymore that you saw back in those days.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call.
Jeff Chandler. I forgot Jeff Chandler. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, he was an excellent bantamweight. I mean, and it's like guys like Villasana, who we talked about. Villasana was a damn tough guy. Go watch his fights. Watch the film again. This guy is giving a tough fight to Nelson and Esparagoza. But no, that's my problem with all the weight classes and the belts is that we might have had more of these fights had they not existed. And Fennec was a damn good fighter, no doubt about it.
Wait a second. I don't think it's the belts, though, because those weights were still there at that time. The difference was those guys fought each other. The guys today don't fight each other. We could have fights at every division that were worth watching if promoters weren't afraid to pair fighters or fighters weren't afraid to demand that they could fight the best.
Well, yeah, no, I think that you definitely got more big fights back then than you do today, and politics stunts that process more than it ever has. But no, well, what I'm saying is though, you had Jeff Fenech, for instance, who started off I think at 118 pounds, moved up to 122 very quickly, moved up to 126 very quickly,
Actually,
and I think ended at 130.
Fenech started at super flyweight, I think.
115?
Yeah. Let me look.
Oh, wow.
We can always go to BoxRec, but I'm pretty sure because I got a career set of all his fights, and his third or fourth fight was for some kind of title at super flyweight, I think. Hold on here. But I'm pretty sure he did start there. Which, moving up that much weight could have had something to do with why maybe he didn't last so long either. But
yeah, maybe.
I think it could have been the style too, though. Yeah. Okay. Fought Junior Thompson, who was 6-7 for the vacant Australian super flyweight title.
Okay, so that's 122.
Yeah, super flyweight. What did I say before?
Oh no, what is that?
No,
super flyweight? No, that's one.
That's 122. It's 115.
That's 115. Yeah, sorry.
So he started at 115, and that was his third fight. So it looks like his first 3 or 4 fights were super flyweight, and then when he got to his 5th fight is when he went to bantamweight, and in his 7th fight he got a title fight against the guy that was 8-1 for the IBF title, but that's when the IBF title was complete bullshit. Now it's just utter bullshit.
Yeah. So but that's my thing is you had the 115. Well, you still had 2 titles. This is my thing though. Is a guy like Antonio Esparagoza didn't fight Fenech or Azuma Nelson, and they were all in the same weight division at one point. You see what I mean? So
But at least we got Finnick and Nelson. Nowadays, none of the three would fight each other.
Well, I mean, shit, we can barely get Gary Russell Jr. and Leo Santa Cruz together. I mean,
shit. Dude, you can barely get Gary Russell to fight once a year.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I'm still anticipating that. I'm still trying to figure out who he's going to fight for this one time a year, you know. But yeah, it's like you can barely get guys who fight in the same promotional matter. Hell, we talked about Errol Spence. You know, you got Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, and these guys should have already. Danny Garcia. These guys should have already been fighting.
Crawford. Yeah, none of them even consider fighting each other. I don't think.
It's ridiculous, man.
But. All right, since it's ridiculous, and it seems like we end every show with that word, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. Sunday night, you good for Inside Boxing Weekly with John Jeremiah?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. That was Tone Loke that said let's do it, wasn't it? And also, by the way, if you're a fan of Deontay Wilder and you think that he could have beaten Muhammad Ali in 1977 or a prime Larry Holmes, you're always more than welcome to come on Inside Boxing Daily and debate that with us. It would be fun because you're stupid. And I'll tell you this, if you've ever been watching a Deontay Wilder fight or just in general ever screamed "Bomb Squad" real loud, you're an idiot. All right, Jeremiah, do you have any final words?
Yeah, no, I had two quick things I want to touch on. So we talked about Ivan Baranchyk and the WBSS.
Yeah,
so it looks like
fight now, aren't they?
Yeah, it looks like it's back on. It looks like he's fighting Josh Taylor, so that's a real good thing. I was hoping it would all get squared away. And then Daniel Jacobs, I guess I think he said this at a press conference, but he felt that Golovkin beat Alvarez twice, and it's not a big deal. But I'm just basically pointing out that that's pretty much how most people felt.
Yeah, but all right, we'll be back Sunday night at 9 o'clock Eastern for Inside Boxing Weekly. We will add John Einreinhofer to the conversation, and maybe we can get him stirred up by talking about Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, he'll yell "Bomb Squad."
Yeah, Bomb Squad. Fucking idiots. But all right, don't scream Bomb Squad. Just don't.
I'm not. We got to get John riled up, though, and he can scream it.
Yeah, I don't even think John would scream it, but what the hell. All right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up for tonight. We want to thank everybody for listening every day this week, and we will be back next Monday through Friday, plus Sunday night with Inside Boxing Weekly. Go to iTunes, rate and like us. Go to Facebook. Follow us on Facebook. Like our Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth if you like what we do. If you don't like what we do, follow us anyways. What the hell? And remember, if you love Deontay Wilder, hit us up. We can come on and you can talk about it with us. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find the Grueling Truth. So, for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster, and you've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.